I guess traffic is really not great this evening, so I don't know what time and when. But then I was like, wait a minute, where are we on ICAF? Okay, so let's dive into what we do have. So the first item on the agenda is EHAG, and I'm going to present it in conjunction with IKL-R. So we have currently IKL-R, which was our ethical and responsible use of generative AI that Nashua wrote. The teachers wrote it and brought it to us. And then what has happened since then is that the state has decided that every district must adopt an AI policy. And the School Boards Association took Nashua's policy and expanded upon it. So that's pretty cool for us. But we're recommending, having looked at the school district policy, which we know was based on our policy, that we replace ours with what they've done, unless people have objections to that. I don't think that there's anything specific to Nashua that was like cut out. I don't think we're losing anything.
No, and I think to Ms. Raymond's point, I think, when this policy came out, I think a group of staff had had done some work on this in I believe it was the summer of '23, and we had done a lot of work about that, and I think as it evolved, I think they kept it kind of so that it could be flexible and change, knowing that things were changing so rapidly. And so I think as the state then adopted their own policy, a lot of what we currently have in our policy is embedded in their policy. My recommendation to Ms. Raymond was to adopt, what EHAG says. I think we did kind of put in one section about kind of some of the consequences that we had put in from our specific policy. But overall, I think as more changes come, it will be easier to kind of go and reference the one policy that we're all looking at rather than going back and where does it fit in ours.
And as I was going through it, I felt like we had one thing for appropriate use of generative AI, which only had 4 items, but the school board policy really breaks it down into guidelines for teachers versus guidelines for other school staff versus guidelines for students. And they really kind of tease out some of the concepts that we had to make them a little bit more specific. Like we said, citing sources, they say clearly label or cite sources. So I think it covers all of our bullets. Did anybody have questions or concerns? I've been getting I've gotten a couple emails or phone calls from parents or community members asking about how we use AI. And so far I've sent them the policy.
And the biggest thing with AI is that what's okay today is terrible tomorrow, and what's terrible today is okay, next week. So it's a constantly changing field. There's also, some AI that is perfectly fine, except like some AI leads you to the right responses to things, and some AI doesn't. So it's this is always going to be constantly a changing thing. I think with the policy, and I think with the additions, especially with the different, and I like the examples as well to sort of show here's some good uses of AI that you can apply. Again, as an artist, I always do not like AI because it does steal. Mm-hmm. But it is now so incorporated quickly into our culture and our workplace that we do have to, learn how to use it as a tool and to realize what its capabilities are, while also knowing the ethical boundaries of using it.
I was just wondering how the district is gonna formally approve generative AI tools. Is that something that you guys have talked about, Mr. Posca?
Yes, I think it's going to be a constant, back and forth of, what is the data privacy? Does it align with our data privacy laws? What is the usage of it, going forward? Currently, we do have an AI platform called Your Way that we're utilizing with our staff, and we're about ready to kind of piloting it with some of the students. So I think it's going to be, I think to Mr. Johnson's point, that there's going to be some consistent fluidity for this and how is it coming in. But I think within our policy, we do also have the guardrails in place to say, hey, what's the new bright shiny object that's coming forward, and does this really fit our needs going forward? And I think we have to, not everything is going to be perfect, and I think even some of the, the Google AI is a good platform. The Microsoft platform for it is also a good platform. So there's some relatively good platforms out there that don't cost a lot, on a regular basis. So what is the best for us going forward is going to be something that we need to assess, and I think is this is going to be part of our work going forward. I don't think you can, utilize it, and that's why I think was we took on this work, was it 2-3 years ago? I think people, rather than put their head in the sands, they kind of said, okay, how do we kind of work within the, within the guidelines to put some guardrails in so everyone can be safe and feel comfortable utilizing these platforms going forward?
Are the teachers being trained in ways to be able to tell if students are using AI, or is that something that's relatively easy?
No, I don't think there's, I think when you're, as a teacher, you're providing the feedback of what aspects of AI can be utilized for your assignment. So I think it's, if anything, I think it's changing how students, it's going to be teachers have to assign some of those assignments and what those expectations are. Because I think going forward, trying to determine whether something is AI generated or not does have its flaws as well. And I think we don't want to get into that. So I think it's how we're utilizing it safely going forward.
And that's also, I mean, to add to that, that's going to change based on which AI you're using, which is why, it becomes more difficult to tell. But a lot of times it follows the same guidelines as plagiarism, like AI often just pulling from other sources. So if your paper you're turning in looks like it was copied from Wikipedia because you used AI, it should be relatively easy to tell.
Right, and I kind of have this idea in my head of, at a maybe middle school level, probably not in an advanced placement course, but at middle school level, I could see a teacher being like, hey, ask AI about X topic, right? And then write me an essay about the ways that AI got it wrong and cite the real life sources that you used or whatever. I can see using it as a teaching tool so that kids know that it's not always reliable. I'm like Mr. Johnson. I think that it's really important that we build people's communication skills, their writing skills, their literacy skills, and that we are not using it for artworks either. And I cringe every time I see on the internet or social media, all of the AI generated art that's coming out. I don't like it.
Yeah, it's a big issue in the art world because some artists are embracing it more than others. So it becomes a sort of back and forth of where your line is, and some lines do shift. And even with programming now, even with your software use, things like Photoshop and stuff are using. I can remove a background from an image in 2 seconds, where 5 years ago it would take a couple hours to do. So it's a constantly evolving thing, and more software is applying AI. If you go on the internet now, your web browser now is giving you AI options when you start to search. So it's sort of like it's just going to be part of everyday life.
Yep, and I think there's different uses for it. I know as we're talking about some of our more advanced classes, like biotechnology, AI is really good at pattern recognition. And so we can talk about what is the use of this in diagnostics and other, ways of doing it. I did have a question for Mr. Posca about, on page 4, it says this, under J, the superintendent shall develop and maintain a generative AI use plan. And I am wondering, how long that would take to generate, and if that's something that would be available upon request to the public or available to the school board.
I think we have parts of this already in place. I think it's putting it all in one document, and one would be kind of the next piece of it. But I think between kind of some of the work that has been done on this policy, along with work done by our coordinator of digital learning, Chris Smith, I think it'd be easy to kind of put all these tools into place so people can see what we currently have in place.
All right, great. I don't have any other questions. Welcome, Ms. Prin. We are talking about generative AI and replacing our policy with one that the School Board Association developed. But they used our policy when creating their policy. So it's much expanded, but it has quite a bit of what we use here. So we feel good about it. I think we feel good about it, yeah? All right, so having said that, I am going to move that we send, that we approve, sorry, that we send EHAG, generative, use of generative AI to the full board for approval.
Second.
Okay. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Okay. Then I just forgot to write Ms. Prin, 6:10. And so, Ms. Prin, we said a little while ago that I didn't have the homework policy on tonight's schedule, but it is still floating out there. And I have pulled it up on my computer from the last full board meeting. So let's finish with AI, and then we can talk about that, or we can finish our agenda and then talk about it. I have no preference whatsoever. All right, so the second thing I want to do is, since we have just sent the new AI policy to the full board, I'd like to move that we rescind IKL-R, which is our policy, since it will no longer have the right letters. I did have a question about that. What's E? We never do E policies.
I agree, and that's why it was a little confusing. I don't know why they had it under E, to be quite honest with you.
I mean, we can keep it as E. It's just a weird, maybe because it applies to every single individual as
I mean, the
opposed
way
to copying it in
it's
multiple
teachers, it's
places.
staff, it's everybody. I think whereas we did before was all about the student usage. So that's probably the same, the reason why it was under E, kind of the bigger umbrella.
I don't love it. Anyways, I still move that we rescind IKL-R.
Second.
Okay. All in favor, say aye.
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 Aye. So that passes. Okay. And then let's go through the agenda, and then we will come back to, does that work? Okay. So that's AI. Ms. Prin, do you want my printout? Yep. I have it open in two places because that is the kind of crazy person that I am. So we are now on, the next one is IMDA, Silent Meditation, the Pledge of Allegiance, and Patriotic Exercises. The last time we looked at this policy was in 2022. There had been some changes to state law, and once again, our state legislature has made some changes. They are recommending that we rename the whole policy just Patriotic Exercises, and they are now requiring school districts to recognize and provide educational programs about Constitution Day and Citizenship Day on September 17th, which I'm sure that they talk about in some of our social studies classes, but now they want all the schools to recognize it.
Had they not done that in the past?
Not as a district, I don't think.
Okay, 'cause in Massachusetts, definitely in my district, we had someone who used to write to all the principals and to the school board to make sure we were recognizing Constitution Day, so we do it every year.
Fascinating. All right.
It's, to Ms. Prince's point, when I was a principal in Massachusetts, I also got that same email from someone regarding that, so.
Well, so I know that they do it like, it used to be fourth grade, now I think it's fifth grade, that does the learning about New Hampshire and the New Hampshire Constitution. They do the visit to the State House. I know that they talk about it, the US Gov classes and the history classes do, but I don't think we have had recognition. They're also requiring all districts to provide time for patriotic exercises for Memorial Day and Veterans Day. That is something that Nashua does already. A lot of our schools invite, like for Veterans Day, a lot of our schools hold ceremonies. They invite veterans. They do a flag ceremony. It's actually really nice.
We did ours today.
Yep.
In Andover.
So they're really nice. And of course, we always have both Veterans Day and Memorial Day parades here in Nashua that our schools participate in. So we are adding that. There's no changes to the requirements for providing the opportunity to say the Pledge of Allegiance and have a moment for prayer if kids want to, but we are going to continue to not have any type of mandate or school-led prayer. And then there is a new state law that says that every school district building must display prominently at least one New Hampshire and American flag that is at least 5 feet in length. I don't know that we have the New Hampshire flag outside of all of our buildings. I know we have the American flag.
The American flag, I don't know about the US flag. I mean, excuse me, the New Hampshire state flag.
So do we got to order some flags up?
I think we probably have to take stock first and then figure out what we
Right?
need.
This sounds like an unfunded mandate, but okay. So we are, the policy also allows us to accept donations of flags. So should, some groups like the American Legion or the VFW or the Boy Scouts want to provide us with flags, we are authorized to accept those. So the other requirement is that the principal assembly room of each schoolhouse must have both the American flag and the New Hampshire flag conspicuously displayed. And that one's an interesting one for me because we clearly have it here in this room. And I've seen them on the stages for various events. But a lot of our elementary schools, a lot of the things are done in the cafeteria or a cafetorium. I don't know if there's both of those flags in all of the elementary schools. And there is no requirement for a size of the flags in the building. But we will need to ask all of the principals to take stock of what they would designate as their principal assembly place. I know my children went to Birch Hill, and if there was a school assembly, it was typically in the gym. And you wouldn't want a flagpole in the gym where it could get hit or knocked over or otherwise damaged. So I don't really know what the principals want to do with that.
I think, a lot of times those flags are in the office, and I think when there are assemblies or there are events, things are moved into place based upon that.
So, yeah. And then the third item that has been added based on some changes to state law are General John Stark Day. So New Hampshire observes General John Stark Day, the second Monday in April. Does that coincide with Patriots Day? No, Patriots Day is the third Monday, right? All right, so General John Stark Day is the second Monday in April, so all schools must have appropriate educational activities to celebrate General John Stark Day. And I have to admit, I didn't grow up in New Hampshire. I don't know anything about General John Stark Day.
I know John Starks, New York Knicks, but
No. So maybe at some point, the board could get an update on how the schools have been celebrating these new patriotic days. So it would be kind of nice to just have a little, I don't know, slideshow or something.
Well, they're not new patriotic days, I think. Just,
Newly recognized by the school district so that we can see what cool things the schools have come up with.
Okay.
I have feelings about this. I feel like, especially at the elementary level, the kids are scheduled so tightly already with the minimum numbers of educational minutes for everything that I don't know where teachers are going to fit this in, but I don't really think we have a choice on whether or not we pass it. And I don't think any of it is, harmful in any way.
The AI overview has it combined John Stark as an electrifying and tenacious playing style as a card for the New York Knicks, so the AI doesn't.
there we go.
And I
Okay.
Googled General John Stark too, so I'm like, nope, wrong guy.
That's funny. We should have like a dress-up day at the elementary school. Pick your John Stark.
I don't think a lot of Knicks jerseys in New Hampshire.
In New Hampshire, right? All right, so I'm going to move that we accept the updates to IMDA. I kind of think that we should keep the title the same, though.
I agree with that. It seems like it's unnecessary to take out the other things that are actually in there.
Right, and I feel fairly strongly that I get questions from time to time from constituents about making sure that we are providing the opportunity to do the pledge every day. And I worry that if we strike the words, the Pledge of Allegiance, from our policy, that people will jump to the conclusion that Nashua is not doing the pledge.
Yeah.
Which is not accurate. So I would move that we approve the changes, but keep the title the same.
Agreed.
Okay, hopefully Ms. Porter and Ms. Cansanella can read my handwriting. Unchanged. Okay, did someone second that?
I'll second that.
Thank you. Oh. Okay. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
So the next one is a new policy, and I am so glad that Ms. Print is here because you might know if your district has it. The proposed policy is JLCAA, Toilet Training and Diapering. And this policy essentially says that in the absence of a developmental delay, physical or mental disability, students entering preschool, kindergarten, or other grades must be toilet trained before attending school. Now, this doesn't mean that we don't have the expectations that kids have accidents, because it is developmentally appropriate throughout elementary school for all kids to occasionally have an accident. And it does not mean in any way that students for whom there is an IEP because they need toileting assistance shouldn't get their toileting assistance, because they 100% should. This is just to say that the general expectation for students entering school is that they have been toilet trained prior to coming to school, and that it is not the responsibility of our preschool and kindergarten teachers to provide toilet training to most average students. And I'm hearing from colleagues in other parts of the country that this is becoming a bigger issue, kind of across the board. Not so much that there's an increase in students with IEPs indicating they need this help, but there's an increase of students who have not achieved this developmental milestone before going to kindergarten, and there's an expectation that school will provide that service, which is surprising to me, because there were kindergarten checklists back when my kids were little. which I don't think we have anymore. But I'm curious about other people's thoughts.
We're dealing with the same issues in Andover. I think it's happening a lot everywhere. Where students, so I don't know if we have a specific policy. I know when I worked in special education, if a student was on an IEP, they were accepted from that. I do know in our last contract, IAs who work with kids who need toileting get a stipend for having to help with that. And it's becoming, right now, it's like who helps take care of that child? That is something that we're dealing with. Is it the teacher's responsibility? Do they go to the nurse? Should the children be able to change themselves? I think we're still kind of in that same conundrum, even where I work.
'Cause it seems to me that if a student has an IEP for toileting assistance, that they also have a specialized staff member who has the appropriate training to provide that assistance. So if a student comes in and doesn't have that IEP, my question is, like, not all schools provide all services because that's cost prohibitive. So I don't know who would who would have the appropriate, I'm gonna call it credentialing, but training to provide that service. And I worry about teachers losing time supervising the rest of their classroom because they're assisting kids with this. But this one's hard for me.
I'm just wondering, so I don't know where this actually came from, if it was something that was from the New Hampshire School Board Association, or if it's something that our district suggested. And also, like, if a child comes to school and they're not toilet trained and they don't have an IEP, we can't send them home because, or can we?
Well,
Because every child should be in public school, whether or not they're, I mean, how are we going to deal with kids that come in that aren't toilet trained when they should be?
I mean, I think kind of as we've heard, this has been kind of probably since coming out of COVID, it's been an increased issue. This is not coming from the State School Board Association. I think from our elementary level, there's been an increase in this concern, and I think to the point that we've already heard, like, who's responsible for it? I mean, yes, we do have supports in place, but again, that's usually for specific needs based upon, usually a student's IEPs. I think, as the policy states, we're still going to support that student, but I think we're trying to also establish an expectation that when students arrive, they have that in place, because we don't always have those services in place. And I think it becomes who is responsible. Is the teachers, is the nurses, is the para going forward? And I think that's a challenge, and I think establishing that expectation going forward is important, but again, still working with the family on what those needs are. So it's been an ongoing challenge, I think, coming out of it. It's been, at the elementary level, obviously, this has been, this is where it's emanating from. So we've kind of tried to find other districts to find out what they have, and we found another district who had a policy in place, so we kind of modeled it after their policy, and that's why we're bringing it forward at this time.
I would just be a little concerned that some parents might not send their kids to school at all because they're not toilet trained appropriately. How would we deal with that?
So I would say that still in New Hampshire, preschool and kindergarten are voluntary. There's no requirement that kids come to school until age 6. After age 6, state law says that kids have a right to come to public school to have their education. And so at that point, if parents aren't facilitating getting the kids here, then it becomes a DCYF issue where DCYF would get involved.
I don't even want,
But I
I think to
wouldn't
the
go that
point, we don't
far.
want to go that far. They're still working with the families and getting the student in school. But again, when, if accidents, continually occur, what are we doing? What is that expectation in place? Because it is kind of, it's disruptive to the, certainly it's disruptive to the student, it's disruptive to the learning environment. So kind of how can we, I think as we've come and set that bar that this is an expectation, so how can we all work together and make sure that those expectations are in place?
And I think we need to tease out too, kids who have a developmental need or a medical need for assistance versus kids who aren't getting like the support from home to get the toilet training that they need. Because to me, that's two different things, right?
yeah.
So if there's a medical or developmental issue, then you would certainly have assistance from the school in getting the child to a medical professional to get a screening to start the IEB process. But for the other side of it, it's assistance from the school on education and then coming to get your child when they have an accident instead of relying on the school to take care of all of that all the time. I'm thinking of my own son was really colicky as a baby, and he used to throw up all the time. And it got to the point where we had to go to the doctor and get a doctor's note to be like, he's not actually ill.
Yeah.
He just needs to be sat upright. And so we had an accommodation for him to sit upright after he ate so that he wouldn't, vomit all his food, and then things got better. But I remember the daycare being like, we can't do this. And I'm like, I can't do it either. I don't know what to do. And then we worked on a path together.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I'm really sensitive to the elementary school teachers who are not trained or equipped to be doing toileting training on top of all of their other responsibilities.
Will this be like printed out and given to parents who are registering their kids for kindergarten and such?
I mean, I think we'll have to promote and set that as the expectation, but I think obviously bringing it forward in November is challenging. November will probably be December, if we talk more about it, but I think it's to Ms. Raymond's point, it's trying to, again, there are issues that come up, and I think our staff goes above and beyond to work with those students and those families, those issues come up, but again, can we also kind of set some expectations that this is what we expect coming forward? And how can we, again, if there's a concern, let's work together to address those concerns, and take some surprises out and then work with you as they come up and try to continue to put together a plan. But again, to your point you made earlier, and I fully agree with it, it's not our intent to prevent students from coming to school, but we want to make sure they're coming to school and they're safe, and we don't want to put them in any of these type of situations either, because it's not fair to them.
Yeah. Okay.
Who's the person who who's the person now, but I guess in the future, who's the person at the school who reaches out to the parents when this is becoming a disruption?
I think it's usually it's probably to be the principal, the assistant principal, but I think a lot of times they're looping in and bringing in, possibly the nurse for support.
Yeah, this doesn't say anything about like who would be, it doesn't give any details about who would be responsible. Is that something that would be like a small policy thing within the school that you would have to develop?
I believe so, and I think, as I continually say before, I think it's setting the expectation kind of going forward. This is what, we're looking for when students arrive, but then again, to your point is and again, I think it tries to kind of detail this as, as situations warrant, working with those families going forward. And I think really that's what it's all about. Let's generate some conversations and start setting the expectations for what's going forward.
Okay.
Okay, so I think we should pass it. I do. I think this is something that is doing that. I am still in favor of not necessarily a kindergarten readiness checklist, but information for parents just in general about like, as you're thinking about kindergarten next year, here are some, tasks that it would be neat if your kid knew how to do, or like, I don't know how to phrase it nicely.
Do we do kindergarten screenings before students start kindergarten here? Are there screenings?
Yes.
Could that be part of the screening? Because don't parents usually have to fill out a questionnaire?
Yes, but I guess let's continue to have the conversation in the sense that, I think those kindergarten screenings usually happen like right after February vacation, so sometime in March for the following year. So there's still a lot
They
of
don't do it in the fall before they start? Oh.
So it's still a lot of this. The
still a lot
kindergarten
of time
registration
there.
starts.
A lot of time,
That's
okay.
a long time. So I think that's kind of
But that's
what
a,
we have in
it does
March
help,
might look
right.
differently in August, for example.
right.
Yeah.
If you're being told in March to,
Right. I mean, that's, to me, that makes sense.
Gives them
If you
time
know
to-
in March that for September, there are some things that as a family you can work on to make your child's transition into kindergarten easier on them, I think that could be helpful information for families. you know, because you don't know what you don't know, like, especially if it's your first child going into school. You know, you don't know what to expect. So,
And again, and if they are struggling, you become aware of aspects of it that may need medical, intervention or, other things that you didn't know are present that you now
right.
start to realize while they get ready to enter school.
It's really concerning that this is an issue. I mean, it just seems like something so basic and.
It's been the last few years in a lot of different places. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so I'm going to move that we send JLCAA, toilet training and diapering, to the full board.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay. Wait, Mr. Johnson, you're going to have fun talking about all this stuff next week without me.
Oh, boy. Interesting.
All right, and so the last policy that we have on the agenda tonight is the district wellness policy. Now, we pulled this, I forget, 2 years ago, last year, because the DECA Club had asked, 2 years ago, the DECA Club had asked that it be updated so that they could have a coffee cart. Because previously, it didn't allow caffeinated beverages in the schools. And then we did a couple other updates according to some legal changes at that time at the federal level. And so now, there are some more changes based on, is it the 306s or an RSA?
ED 306.
Okay, so the 306s have made some updates, and you'll see them kind of in red. One of the things that I don't like about this policy is that it has hyperlinks. So every time there's a change to a federal or a state page, we have to update it to put the right link in. But I don't know how else to do it. So a couple things. They've changed the name of the District Wellness Committee to just Wellness Committee. That one's easy. They've included community health professional and food service staff to people who should be on the Wellness Committee. Let's see. This is a new link. Another is that another link? Yeah, another link, a third link, a fourth link, and then fifth link on page 5. And then on page 6 is a whole new bulleted section. And so this is the part that came from the 306s, which is things that districts have to do or allow in order to promote wellness. And a lot of this stuff is stuff that is already our practice, like students permitted to have their water bottles in the classroom. I think there are districts in New Hampshire that did not allow that. Nashua has, for as long as my students have been in school, allowed kids to have a water bottle, if not on their person, like in their little cubby in elementary school. So I was surprised to see that one. And I remember from when my kids were in elementary school, like they were very strict about sharing your snacks with your friends. And I remember having to have lots of conversations with my kids about how generosity is good, but peanut allergies are bad. So, and some people you don't know, like even if it's not a no peanut classroom, like your stuff might have been exposed, like you just can't do it.
And my son still has to deal with that in college. So
Yep.
it never, when you have those allergies, you always have to be aware of these things.
Yeah. Some of the things are about minimal wait time for school meals, having adequate lunchtime. Do you know how long the lunch breaks are? I think it's like 30 minutes for the high school, but I don't recall for the others.
I think it's a little less than that. I think it's about 23 minutes at the middle school. It's on or about that at the high school as well. So it certainly, I think, is under 30 minutes, I believe.
As an adult, that seems so short. To get in line and then eat. You can't, so one of the things that I liked about this is it says students are not denied recess or other physical activity throughout the day. So I don't think that Nashua has a common practice of encouraging recess to be restricted, but I do think that some guidance will need to go out to the elementary schools that recess should not be restricted as a disciplinary measure.
I think that was something that came out, I think, to the point Ms. Raymond made before, this policy was kind of significantly over, done over about 2-3 years ago. What we're seeing now are some minor changes, but one of the major changes prior to that was that the fact that you could not withhold recess or something as a punishment. So this is something that's already been in place, and it's not, you can see it's not redlined here because it was, that was added to the last time we did this. A lot of this is really just about some of the motion breaks in I think it was 2 meetings ago when we passed daily activity, I think as a policy, IMAH. Some of what was an IMAH kind of dovetails with what's in here right now. So that's why the changes that you're seeing right now, though it's a large policy, there's not a lot of major red lines in there besides that one about other activities to promote student wellness. So overall, I think it's minor changes to kind of get us in line, but this is kind of going back to what we talked about a couple months ago, all those Ed 306 updates coming through and trying to get us, make sure we're in line with all the updates based upon what we got from the state.
Okay. And there's one other thing I just wanted to bring up. I did get one parent letter of concern about caffeinated beverages at the high schools. So originally, the caffeinated beverage request came in from the students, it came from DECA through the student senates. They made a lovely presentation to us about why they wanted to do it for fundraising purposes. And since then, caffeinated beverages have kind of been trickling into the high schools only in other places. So there's some sugar-free sodas that have caffeine, and then there's a couple other caffeinated beverages allowed in the lunchrooms. And my understanding from food service is that students are limited to one caffeinated beverage from the lunchroom. You can't buy 2 a day. And that they are below the American Academy of Pediatrics recommendation of 100 milligrams of caffeine per day. The school cannot and does not regulate what students bring from home, right? So if a student comes in with, 3 Monster energy drinks, the school is not going to be taking those from the student. But we won't sell them 3 Monster energy drinks. And so there was a request from a parent that we consider whether we want to rescind allowing caffeinated beverages at all. Because in the past, I think Nashua did not allow it, and then we changed it to following the USDA guidelines, which have no limits on caffeine. We could, add something to adopt the American Academy of Pediatrics guidelines, which says 12 to 18, 100 milligrams. I don't know that if that's helpful or not.
The other issue would be, lunchroom can, limit, but then vending machines don't have any limits on them.
They don't, and we don't have any of the energy drinks. We have the sodas, but we don't have the energy drinks in the beverage machines, correct?
That's correct.
Yeah. And so the other thing that food service advised me was that parents can have a note on their child's lunch account that they're not to use their lunch account to purchase energy drinks. So you can decide for your own child, as for always. I don't have strong feelings either way, so I thought I would bring it to the group.
You've only heard from one parent, right?
Yeah, one in the couple years that we've had this.
I think to that point, Ms. Lanfear, that when I had a conversation with the high school principals, they're not getting ask this question on a regular basis either. It's no, I mean, every once in a while, well, once a year, something comes up, you know, and the parent is surprised that this is, occurring, and then the policy and the situation is explained to the parent of what our policy is. So
The-
I don't
the
think this
lunch-
is widespread concern.
The lunch staff doesn't have any reservations about having to monitor this, do they?
It's built in, so if Matt Posca bought a drink at first lunch, Matt Posca can't go back again and buy another one during that lunch. Now, maybe his friend Heather Raymond could buy him one going on. That may happen, but that it is limited by the student account, and this you can all, by the student purchases.
I asked, so I have two students here at North, and I was like, go scope out the caffeine in all these drinks, because I don't purchase these things for my family. So I don't know a lot about them. And both of them came back, they have different lunch periods, so I sent them out independently without telling them about each other. And both of them came back and reported that none of the caffeine limits were above that American Academy, the 100. They were like, Mom, it's supposed to be 200 a day. And I was like, it is not, it's 100. But also none of the ones that they found were higher than that. That is my unscientific research project. But again, I did ask the director of food service, and she has also confirmed that, we're not giving kids 200 milligrams of caffeine, even though that's what my children think is acceptable. Ridiculous.
So, I mean, do we have any drinks that are like considered much higher in caffeine than comparable to a Diet Mountain Dew?
So we have the Celsius drinks. Do they have the Monster drinks?
I'm not exactly sure what the energy drink is. I thought it was Celsius, to be quite honest with you.
And then there's a new drink that's the Bloom drink, but those are based on like green tea, and they're like a probiotic health drink. So, and I'm just gonna Google how much
I
caffeine
mean,
is in
even health drink, Panera had their whole issue with their caffeinated drinks that they had to pull because people getting refills and then,
Yeah. So I am a little concerned about that, personally, right? Because
Right.
I'm one of those people that's really sensitive to it. Like I don't order tea, for example, at like a Dunkin' Donuts or Starbucks, because the entire water system becomes contaminated with caffeine when you make coffee and you use the same pots. So, and I can taste it, I can feel it, because I'm a crazy person. So, I'm sensitive to it. But I think unless we have an outpouring of public comments telling us something different, I say we wait.
Yeah, I think it would be interesting to get some feedback from the lunchrooms and stuff of what we're looking at. What drinks are the highest level of caffeine compared to what's available, and if there is anything that we would think pushes the boundaries. But I mean, from what I've seen, everything seems to be underneath that
Right.
100
Although
milligrams.
I'm
And I
looking-
lived off of Joe Cola in high school, so
Yeah.
Right, yeah, I mean,
there was sugar and caffeine.
I was a child of the 90s. We had a candy machine and a soda machine. Like, nobody was talking about this stuff. Google says that Celsius energy drinks have 200 milligrams of caffeine.
Oh, that and that. So,
And
yeah.
it also says that the American Academy of Pediatrics says 100 milligrams.
So that would be an example of something that probably.
Something that maybe has more. And again,
Well, I just want to say, when I've talked to Ms. Benoit, we are following our policy.
Right.
As far
Yeah.
as what's going on.
Oh, yeah, sure.
Right,
From
'cause
that standpoint.
the
Oh, yeah.
USDA is very clear that they don't regulate caffeine. They only regulate sugar for schools. So I don't know if we want to wade into the regulating caffeine.
Yeah.
And I don't know what stock we have in stuff or how expensive, I don't know any of that. I'm just throwing it out there for discussion.
Well, it's not part of this policy, right?
No, we would have to add it.
Yeah, so I feel like that would be opening I mean, we just approved the DECA. They went to a lot of trouble to bring that before us and everything. And we haven't had any reports of any issues, other than that one parent who didn't even, I think they didn't even say there was an issue, they were just concerned about it. I don't, if there's no problem, I don't see why we should add it.
Okay. I like to do my due diligence and throw it at the team instead of making a command decision that, you know what I mean? 4 heads are better than one. All right, 5 heads are better than one. All right, so based on that, I'm going to move that we send JLCF to the full board as it was presented in our packet this evening.
Second.
Okay. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay, and then not on our agenda, but we kind of have IKB homework still floating around. And at the last, which I didn't print out because I wasn't thinking of it.
No, no, I know what I want to say.
Okay. I have it pulled up. And what we had decided on last time was to change it by adding a line that says the elementary student handbook should be referenced for the elementary homework expectations. Then, at our last board meeting on October, I want to say 27, Ms. Pren had asked about if we have an overarching policy for what happens on religious holidays. And it sounds like there isn't anything written down, and it can vary from school to school, classroom to classroom. So,
Yeah, something I wanted to take into consideration, I know where I work, we are actually told, and we are given an email every time a major, and it has to be a major religious holiday. For example, like Rosh Hashanah or Yom Kippur. Yom Kippur especially, children are fasting a lot of times. That there is an expectation that we are actually, we're told not to assign homework. And also, we're not supposed to do any big tests or anything like that. But I would think that would, obviously I'm flexible, but I was thinking about the fact that as a general rule, we observe all the Christian holidays. When the Christian holidays like Christmas come up, there's not even at school, and for the most part, there's no homework, there's no tests or anything like that during like Christmas break. And I would assume, depending on when Easter falls, people wouldn't do for like Easter or even Good Friday, or if there are any other Christian holidays. And honestly, what made me think about it is one of our student reps wasn't coming to meetings, and it was because he was fasting for Ramadan.
right.
And I really feel we need to be respectful of that.
I'm wondering about, so I agree. And I don't think it is fair to put the onus on parents to always have to reach out to the school to be like, hey, my student needs an exemption because it's this major holiday, right? Having said that, I don't know how we just say for the entire month of, for example, Ramadan, that there be no assignments or tests, because that also seems difficult.
Yeah, that does seem excessive. But I was thinking of just what could we do as a team to kind of compromise or figure something out.
I guess, my question becomes, is that something where the district could have, I don't know, maybe the steering committees at the various levels come up with some guidelines for staff?
Again,
Is there something already?
I think there's more of a practice in each building for how that goes about.
Right, but I'm thinking about how mobile many of our families are, where it is not unusual to have a family start in one elementary school and go to a second or a third. And there should be some consistency. Or we have students going back and forth between north and south all the time. There should be some consistency that whether you're in north or south, if it is Rosh Hashanah, you know what the expectations are.
Again, so is it a matter of identifying all the major holidays that we're going to recognize?
I don't know.
It can get sticky when it comes to a lot of the holidays. Maybe we could figure out a way to do just the most important. Like, for example, I know people who are Jewish, Yom Kippur is more of a holiday than even Rosh Hashanah is.
And I think that there are different rules and expectations for the different holidays, right? Like there might be some where homework is not a problem, and there might be others where homework interferes with your ability to appropriately celebrate the holiday. You know,
I mean, the other problem you run, there's also different levels, whether you're Orthodox or Hasidic or anything like that, those sort of things will come into play. So it becomes an issue because it can become very individualized based on that, students' families' observation of those holidays.
Yeah.
so in the policy, it says the teachers will provide a written class homework policy at the secondary level. It doesn't say anything in there specifically for our policy about what the expectations are for illness, but I know that for most of the experience I've had with my kids is if you're out for a day, you get, you know what I mean? If you're out for a day, you get a day to make it up. If you're out for a week, you get a week to make it up, that kind of a thing. And I've never had an issue where a teacher wasn't willing to work with my students, because they were out with strep throat or something for 3 days to figure out how to get the work in. But I also don't think that every time there's a religious holiday, those kids should be having to scramble for the next 3 days. So I was going with this was, originally I was thinking, well, maybe we should say that it's similar to being, having the extra time for an illness, but it's not the same. So I wonder if we could consider passing the policy as is and tasking, if there's a group that could be tasked with kind of finding out what teachers think about it. I don't know what kind of because the steering committees are meeting again, right? The teacher
We
committees?
will be. I guess, what is it, what is the task that what is the feedback that you want back from the teachers on this, or at the building level, I should say?
I guess what I would want is to know if they think that we need to have a big P policy guideline, or if it's a small P guideline for teachers to reference, so that there's consistency between the schools depending on grade level. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that makes sense. I know in my district, we get a list of the holidays that are coming up just from the superintendent. The superintendent sends ours out. And the only direction we're given is if it's a high holiday that we're not supposed to give homework.
Do you know if that,
I'm sorry for interrupting. That comes from our principal. The principal sends that to us.
do you know if that is the same at the secondary level as it is at elementary, or if it's elementary dependent?
I only know elementary. I know the guidelines from our superintendent goes to everybody, so everybody gets that. Specifically, I'm going to guess that my superintendent probably tells the principals to let people know at each level when there's a high holiday that we need to be cognizant of.
I just think Nashua is such a diverse community
know.
that we want everyone to feel welcome and supported.
Yes, and that was my concern about that. I don't want it to be discriminatory, if that makes any sense.
Mr. Johnson, you look like you have a thought.
No, I'm just thinking that from all that again, because we're so diverse, there's so many, different holidays that are being celebrated on, across the board, that it like I said, it becomes very, very individualized to the students. And I think in that case, it becomes very much a small P type thing where, that's something where you need to address it on the with the schools, and having it in policy may be a little tough to figure out because, you don't want to start listing holidays and then have somebody like, well, I'm this and,
Yeah.
We celebrate, such and such a day in, October. Why do I have to do homework that night, So, Yeah, so it's tough because it's tough to figure out how exact to apply it, but I do feel like it's a very much a small P policy type
Yeah.
thing where it's treated on the school level.
Yeah, I think that was my question at the board meeting. I'm like,
Yep.
is this a big P policy question or is it a little?
Yeah,
Yeah.
If you want, I will, and I think this is where I think we were kind of left it off. I was making sure I got my, directive correctly. We can, I think between me and Dr. Scarpati, we can kind of work with the principals at the varying levels to get some feedback of what that is, and we can, have another conversation about it. But I think to the point that was made earlier, I don't think that should prevent the policy from being moved forward.
Okay.
But I think what it should do is maybe going forward, does it allow us to kind of, put a better practice in place that's more inclusive and making people aware of what's going on for those students in front of them. So I think that's certainly some work that we can do and continue to report back on what we're doing.
Okay.
Just writing down on the notes that we had a discussion on IKB homework. Administration will follow up with teachers, et cetera, right, et cetera, regarding holiday, religious holiday expectations for homework. Okay. All right, and that's all I have.
do you want to make a motion?
One more thing.
Oh,
One thing. Mr. Posca and I talked, and I sent out an email, I think, last week about not meeting in December for policy. Because it was an election year and we have 2 new board members coming on in January. There'll be a first reading next week for these policies and a second reading in December. And then we would start January fresh, instead of asking new people to have a second reading on something that they've never seen before and haven't had the opportunity to hear public comments about, and, putting them on the spot on their very first board meeting to either abstain or vote on something without preparation, we just felt, I don't know, unwelcoming. So it's our proposal that we not meet in December for policy and that we start fresh in January with whomever is on policy in January. Does anyone have objections to that?
no.
All right, great. So based on that,
Before, just to clarify, so should I be bringing the home, policy IKB back with these policies so we can vote on it?
yes.
Okay.
So IKB would be
Second vote, right?
second.
Second reading.
It's
Yeah,
probably
second
at this
reading.
point, it's like I think the third reading or something, but we'll put it under second reading. And then these will be first reading for Monday's agenda.
Right. So we can vote on IKB on Monday as the board.
I think so, yeah. Okay, that's all I have for real this time. So I will move that we adjourn.
Second.
Okay, all in favor, say aye.
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 All right, so it is 7:05 PM. Woo, good job, us.